Happy New Year, everybody. At least to those of you who I haven't been able to see and greet over the phone or over email. Welcome. Thanks for coming. Um, I've read enough pieces about the Jordan Morris transaction from all of you already that I'm sure there really won't be a lot of questions left. So the good news is that's we're all on the same on ramp together, but we're super excited about it. It's very much what Jordan wants. I think it's the culmination, the fulfillment of a dream, and we're going to be rooting for him. So we're really excited about him moving to Swansea and that getting announced this morning, and we can't wait to watch him play there. As we move forward, we will have some coach announcements, some player announcements, potentially up to five of those coming next week. Probably nothing that I would describe as earth-shattering, but I think you guys will get a better idea of how we're filling out our team or what our thoughts are going forward. But with that in mind, I'll open the floor, or Alex open the floor, and let's fire away.
Go ahead, guys.
Hi, John Lupo from Vavel. First of all, Garth, what made you choose Swansea City for Jordan? Was it the coaching structure? Was it that they're contending for a spot in the Premier League, so he'll be playing under some pressure situations? What made it Swansea, and what do you hope Jordan can accomplish at Swansea?
Look, we wanted to send him to a club that had some familiarity, and has been well documented. The ownership of Swansea includes our own Peter Tamazawa, who's our president of business here at the Sounders, as well as Steve Kaplan, who's the majority owner of DC United. So we have relationships within the league with those folks, and as I said, with Peter, we have a personal connection there. So we felt like it was really a good situation where Jordan was going to another familiar setup and one where we could keep really close tabs on him. So it felt comfortable and familiar. I think over the course of Jordan's career, he's done very well in situations where it's familiar and he feels like he's supported. But at the end of the day, this is up to Jordan. This is where he wanted. I mean, are we hopeful? Are we optimistic that Swansea's currently in second and they have a good team and that they're going to go up to the Premier League? Sure, that's what everybody hopes. But it'll be up to Jordan and it'll be up to that team as to how they play. And we know the coach was really excited to have him. Their version of a sporting director was really excited to have him. So, I think it's a place where the soccer folks on that side want him, the business folks on that side want him, and we feel like it's a good environment into which to send him. So, hopefully, all the elements of the recipe are there. And then it'll come down to what does Jordan want, it could be that Jordan goes there and tears it up and decides at the end of the day he wants to come home. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And again, we're excited for Jordan and we hope to see him succeed all the way.
Garth, are there any details you could share in terms of that buyout option, whether it is an amount or, in your opinion, the likelihood that that he might stay with Swansea City?
Look, I have no way of predicting if he will or if he won't. It's a significant transfer fee that Swansea would pay in order to acquire Jordan. It would be more than all the other transfer fees in Sounder history combined. Now, some of that is a little bit of an indictment on we haven't sold a lot of players, but I think it gives you a sense of the scope of what we're talking here. It would be a really significant transfer. In a transfer in that form, the first $1 million roughly would go back into the salary cap as allocation, and the rest would come to the club, and we could use it to potentially reinvest in the team. And we have 3 designated player slots that are filled right now, and none of which are convertible for 2021. But we did structure the JP deal. That's the other big announcement we had yesterday. We did structure that such that he could, in theory, depending on a couple of things, he could potentially be converted in 2022 into a TAM player. And so that was important to us to have that flexibility. And the other possibility for 2021 is that it's conceivable that some version of a young designated player rule might come into play. And again, we don't know that. I want to be very clear. That is not official. It is not decided. But if were it to come into play, that is potentially another mechanism by which we could try and replace Jordan if he is able to stay in the UK long term after a transaction.
Hey Garth, continuing on that buyout thought, there is there a scenario where that buyout would happen after he has already played a little bit with Seattle? So is there a situation where he comes back after the loan, plays a little bit more for you guys, and then goes back over to Swansea or somebody else on that full transfer? So or would it be just direct from the loan to the buyout and he would stay over there if the buyout did happen?
So Swansea has the ability to buy Jordan or not buy Jordan. So if they bought Jordan, then he's their player, and they would determine what comes next. I think the scenario you're proposing, Jackson, is somewhat unlikely just because of the schedule. So Swansea played their last league match on May 8th. If they're in the top two places, they go up. But if they're 3 through 6, then they go into the playoff. That would go through May 31st. The window, as currently structured in MLS, closes May 4th. Which means it would be difficult to impossible to bring Jordan back before then, even if they didn't buy him. And then the way it plays out is the transfer window opens July 7th for MLS, but the Gold Cup starts July 10th, and that goes until August 1st. So I think there aren't a lot of ways that Jordan comes back to us for any meaningful time ahead of August 1st, or really after August 1st, because that's the date of the Gold Cup final, is my memory. So this is certainly an extended spell. And again, this is something that Jordan wanted, his dream, and we were always going to support it, because this goes back to part of the reason he came to us instead of Werder Bremen back in 2016 was the promise that this would be a relationship, and this would be something where he worked for our best interest and we worked for his. And so there really wasn't any hesitation on our part when he said that this was what he wanted to do. And we said, okay, let's find a way to make it happen.
Garth, can you give us a little bit of history on how the first contact was made and how the transaction occurred?
As I said, it was a number of things, Felipe, and it was, again, the ownership groups of the Sounders and Swansea know each other. And so those folks are having conversations all the time. And, it was when Jordan came to us and said, hey, this is something he's interested in, then I think those conversations accelerated.
Garth, could you possibly...
I'll go. When you talk about...
Go ahead, Jada.
Thanks. When you talk about transfer fees, so then some of the reports is like 7 million or more than 7 million. Can you confirm if that's the right ballpark?
I think you guys are very good at what you do, and I have no reason to doubt any of your reporting on the topic, Jada.
Garth, could you, if you can, share with us when these conversations with Morris first began about his interest in playing overseas with you guys?
They seriously, Michelle, date to 2016. It was because it's never been black and white with the Morris family. I mean, Dr. Morris was our team physician for years and years. I mean, long before I was here, and so it really has been a special relationship. And it was when he went to Stanford, when he left Stanford to join us. Part of that do I go to Europe? Do I go? It's always been a little bit more gray with him than it has with anybody else, and there's always been a willingness to engage, because he's just pretty unique in a lot of ways. I mean, the impact that he's had on the Seattle community, I just don't know that you're going to match that with another kid or another person. Like just Jordan, who he is so important to the city and the community and to our club. And so it's one of those where we this is a culmination of, I would say, 5 years of conversations. I think there's an element of, if you've been, one of the league MVP finalists and you've been the rookie of the year and you've won a couple titles and been to 4 finals and 5, what mountains are left to conquer. I think it'll be interesting to see, what the next step is for Jordan, but certainly we I think that kid can accomplish anything he wants to. We'll be rooting for him.
Hey, Garth, John here.
John again. Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, okay, thanks. To what degree did the uncertainty about the start of the season maybe add some additional momentum to this deal? I mean, was that a factor at all?
Yeah, I mean, look, Jeff, sorry. Looking right at you, Jeff. I apologize. We just don't have any information on the season. So, I mean, I can't say that, we as of right now, we're planning on the season starting March 1st. So, that is, that's all the information we have. And so, no, it was not a factor in the decision.
But I mean, did it affect maybe Jordan's decision to go over? Maybe because, I mean, I've heard that their contingency plans to start as late as May. I mean, and obviously if he wasn't going to be playing regular games, in March, April, and May, I mean, might that have said, hey, I need to be playing games, and this is one way to satisfy that?
Yeah, look, as to what Jordan was thinking, I think you'd be best served asking Jordan that, rather than me speculating about what he feels is the MLS schedule for this year. All I know is what we've been told officially, and that's that the season is scheduled to start on time, and that's what we figured in our analysis.
Okay.
On that same note, Garth, you're saying that right now the plan is for it to start regularly. Does that mean that you're expecting the players to check in at the usual time than every other season?
We don't know that, Nico. The easiest way I'm going to say this is that, those negotiations now are league to player union, and folks at the general manager level we're not privy to those. So I would be remiss in representing that I know anything, because I just don't. And so we know what you guys know in terms of official announcements, and we're just going to sit tight and we'll the league and the players union will tell us stuff as they know it.
So then at this point, the players don't have a specific date to come back to. They haven't been told you have to be back by this date, or they do?
We have not told our players a specific date to report as of right now. That's accurate. But again, I think speculation that means they're going to report late is also unwarranted. So we simply don't know. And we didn't want to tell our players one date and then move it subsequently based on later events. So we're sitting tight and look, for those of you who have been covering us for a while, from a Sounders perspective, this uncertainty is maybe a blessing in disguise. We need a break after you play all the way until December 12th. I mean, you guys have seen how exhausted we were at the beginning of 2017, how exhausted we were at the beginning of 2018, coming off playing into December. So, selfishly for us, this is not a bad thing.
Hey, Garth, was the conversations just Swansea, largely because of the relationships you guys have, or were there other clubs that were in discussions about trying to get Jordan on a loan?
Whole bunch of other clubs, more than half a dozen other clubs in the discussion. Swansea seemed like the best fit for everybody at the end of the day. And were those scattered throughout? Sorry, were those scattered throughout Europe, or were those specifically in England? There were in at least 3 countries that I can recall off the top of my head. Thanks.
Garth, there's any concerns about, Jordan Morris has been a key player for the team, for the MLS, for the national team, but is any concern from the club because the championship is probably not way better than the MLS? Any concerns about that he might affect his level of play?
I think going to a foreign culture, playing for a new coach and a new team, anybody who's watched games of the championship knows that it's a very physically competitive league. So I think it'll definitely be challenging for Jordan and part of his development. And look, if he goes over there and the problem is he's so good, he's the best player in the league. Again, those are wonderful problems to try and solve for, because then he'll be in demand for multiple Premier League clubs and, probably has a bright future ahead of him. So I definitely think there'll be adjustments culturally, socially, new team, all that stuff. He's coming in the middle of the season. Like, this isn't a cakewalk by any means. Now, that said, do I think Jordan's going to succeed? Yes, I think he's going to knock it out of the park. He's ready for this.
Hey, Garth, I was wondering if you just talk about Chris Henderson moving on and the dynamics, what that does to the club, And you probably, like you said, you could tell us next week, but just Chris Henderson moving on and where you're at with that vacancy.
Sure. I thought 21 was going to be better than 2020, and we've had a good January 20th, so I guess that one day is better. But it's been in the short term, it's going to be rough. I mean, as I said repeatedly over the years, even Chris was long overdue to go and run a team of his own. And he. I think stayed with the Sounders for a whole number of reasons. But I mean, going back to when I was hired, I mean, a different person, a different personality, he might have said, screw this Garth guy. I don't want to work for him. I put in all the time before, why does Garth get to run it, not me? So, and like, I'll always be grateful to him, man, on a totally personal level, much deeper than professional. Like, he not only welcomed me and embraced me and made me feel comfortable, but he made me better. He challenged me where I needed to be challenged, and he complimented me where I could be complimented. And, he is himself such an accomplished person and leader and talent identifier. I mean, the most critical part of our business, the thing that, everything falls apart if you're not good at, is still talent evaluation. And Chris was the best at that. So, I just tip my hat to him. I'm so proud of him. I am rooting so hard for him. And to go back to, where Chris and I both played in Miami, I think it's really fun for him. I think it's a cool opportunity. He gets to work with a friend of mine down there, Jason Kreis, some other folks, some really good folks down there. So, I think it's a great move for him. And is it going to be disruptive for us in the short term? Absolutely, yes. Are we going to replace him? Yeah, we're certainly going to interview a bunch of folks, and that process probably rolls out over the next couple of weeks. We'll do our best. And do I don't know, Maz, if we're necessarily going to replace him like for like. I think we might bring in somebody with a slightly different skill set. One of the things that we're looking at is player development experience. We've been so focused on winning championships, and we've done that, and our coaching staff's done a great job of getting the most out of our team. And we've done last minute trades, like sending first round picks for Roman Torres, so we had a reliable fourth center back in case of the pandemic hit us. And those are short term decisions. And I think we need to change our focus now in the salary cap cycle we are in. We're going to still compete for championships every year. But we do now need to focus a little bit more on the player development and overcome that last hurdle. We've have the players, we have them signed to the first team. We haven't gotten them into the first team yet. And we've seen other teams, Kansas City, Philadelphia, the teams that won the West and won the East, and playing a number of good young players in both of those teams. So we know it's possible to both compete and to use young players. And I think that's going to be part of our challenge, and that may inform some of what we look at in this role going forward. And again, none of which is to say that Chris wasn't awesome in player development along with everything else. Just talking about where we are as an organization, and how we see our next steps.
Garth, speaking of the salary cap and replacing Morris, how does the loan impact your budget strategy? Obviously, you said that previously you guys were pretty strapped for cash under the budget. So just curious how Jordan leaving affects what you guys are able to do over the next, say, 6 months until a decision on Morris is made.
Sure. So, and once you guys see the 4 or 5 player transactions we'll announce next week, you'll understand a little bit better how we've allocated some of those resources. But we were out of money before this. So the 2 things that have happened this week, this is the world we're in, man. Like, it's just this week, our plan that I had talked about for the last 2 months, it all changed because now Jordan's going on loan to Swansea, and they're going to cover his salary. That represents a significant salary cap savings to us, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth. So we have that. And look, and Henry Wingo, again, talking about, fabulous player development news. I mean, Henry Wingo got sold to a Champions League club in Hungary. And he took that opportunity. He went on with Molde and, seized it with both hands and pushed himself forward. And now he's playing on a platform, where potentially no Seattle product has ever played before, and sold for a significant transfer fee. And we get a sell-on figure from that. So, we got two leprechauns landed from a salary cap perspective this week, and I got 2 bags of gold. So, we have to sort through exactly how much that's going to be and some of the details there. But we do have some capacity now to do things. Now, the kind of cautious idea I'd put as counterpoint to that is, we only have 2 foreign spots. So with that in mind, we still want to be very judicious with how we spend. And I think we want to look at, for example, Alex Roldan at the right back spot. This is a guy that our coaching staff had so much confidence in. They started, for every single playoff game, including an MLS Cup on the road. He has 8 or 9 or 10 career starts. So we just don't have, we don't have the final package of information on Alex Roldan. And I want to be in a position of supporting our coaching staff and knowing that if they have that kind of confidence in a player, that they're going to start him in an MLS Cup on the road. I want to support him in that, and give him a chance to see how Alex can do long-term for the Sounders. So that would argue for, being a bit more judicious with how we address that position. And we have signed a player that can help us with a little bit of depth there. Again, you'll see that next week. But we want to see how that goes, and look, we want to see how Josh Atencio does and how Danny Leyva does. And if one of them pops in preseason, you can push Christian Roldan out to the right wing. If Ethan Double-Air pops in preseason, maybe he's your starting right winger. We're going to know more about how long Jordan's going to stay. As an example, though, it probably doesn't make a ton of sense to replace Jordan Morris when you're not sure what's going to happen. Even if you're waiting until August, to go out and spend, $1 million on a left winger to then have Morris come back and put that guy on the bench, that's not real efficient. So I do think we have, it's a situation we've not been in before, and we have to be creative in how we look at it and think about it. But that's some of the caution in how we're going to use it. And the last thing I'll add is one of the kind of foundations of our success in this run of the last 5 years has been deploying money in the summer. And a lot of that, I think it was attributed to various things, but on a really basic level, it's just math. If you spend your money in the summer, you get twice as good a player. That you're spending, if you have $500,000 and you spend it for 6 months, you functionally get $1 million player, as opposed to signing that player in March and having to, then you're going to get a $500,000 player. So, that'll inform some of what we do as well.
Hey, Garth, going back, I had a follow-up in regards to the quality of young players. I mean, you see that on the national team, and also you mentioned Kansas City and the other clubs. Can you just talk about the state of the young American soccer player and the quality, what's happening on the landscape?
Well, look, we certainly see it on the national team, right? I mean, there's never been a better age, for Serginho Dest and McKennie and Pulisic and all the other guys, Tyler Adams, and, more American kids. And supposedly Dallas may have another kid that's being looked at right now by a club in Europe. So we'll see what happens there. It's great. But I would also say, Maz, speaking as a former player, I think the American player market has been undervalued for a while. And we as a league have really focused on retaining our talent. We haven't looked to sell players actively. And I think this is part of the pivot, we're joining the global ecosystem. And I think as we do that, we will see that American players are just as talented as their counterparts around the rest of the world. And certainly, MLS as an entity has spent close to $100 million on player development, in the last decade. So and probably more than that even. And, you hope that at some point that begins to bear fruit, but the other person I really want to give a ton of credit to, though, is Greg Berhalter. Because when Greg Berhalter took over the national team, he went in and he took some bullets, man. I mean, this is a first-time national team coach, and he played these kids, and we weren't very good. And he got killed. And he stuck with it. He said, nope, this is my plan. This is what we're going to do. These kids are good enough. They're talented enough. I'm going to put them in a system. I'm going to put structures around them. I'm going to play a veteran player next to him or behind him so we get the right balance within the team. And if I do that, they're going to pop. And sure enough, I don't have enough admiration to express for Greg for having withstood that criticism and sticking to his plan. Because I think if you're going to play young players and you're going to do this, you have to be willing to do that. You have to understand that their ceiling is higher, but their floor is lower than that league average veteran. That maybe was the comparison, national team average player. But if you want to win titles long-term, if you want to try and take a shot at winning the World Cup one day, you got to go with the kids that have the higher ceilings, and you got to give them an opportunity to play and stick with them. So that's definitely something that I'm super appreciative about, because that alone has driven this player market. Jordan Morris is one piece of this. Henry Wingo is another piece of it. But those guys at the top end going over there and succeeding, that changes the landscape. That makes this, it creates a whole new world for us in terms of developing players and potentially having a market for them overseas, as well as with the Sounders.
Garth, going back to the salary cap, and look, you're one of the best in the business. I know you're always thinking ahead of the game. Raul Diaz has the end of his contract and an option for 2022. Are you already budgeting for that, or how concerned are you that a lot of players like to be secure before their option year? Can you just give me a little bit of background on that?
Yeah, we're having conversations with Raul and his representatives. We've had a good relationship with both Raul and his representatives, so hopefully those conversations go well. But the overview is Nico's under contract now through 2023. Raul's under contract through 22. Jordan's under contract with us through 23, obviously with the potential move in mind, what could happen in there. And Joe Paulo is under contract through 21, albeit with an option, a club option of ours for 2022. So the same deal structure as what you just mentioned with Raul, Nico. So the stability of our core group of guys is still pretty good. Christian's under contract through 2023. Yamar's under contract through 23, might even be 24, but it's at least 23. And we're in conversations. Steph's guaranteed through this year, but we're in advanced conversations with him as well, where hopefully we are able to close out something that keeps him here with us through 23 as well. So the idea is, as I initially told Matt Pence in his piece a couple weeks ago, we believe we have a core in place, and this is no way, shape, or form a rebuild or a reset or any of that. This is just, we hit a little bit of a salary cap wall. That's what happens. 5 years, win titles, get paid more bonuses, increase the salaries. You pay fewer and fewer guys more and more money. And in order to pivot and reset and continue, now you reset that core around that core, and then you try to rearm around them and get the club again on a sustainable footing for hopefully the next 2 or 3 years, so we can take advantage of both of our contract situations, but also of Nico and Raul in particular are really special players. They're top 10 players in MLS, and they just don't come around every day, and we need to take advantage of their primes as best as we possibly can, and continue to field really competitive teams. Because as long as we have those guys, and as long as we have that core of 6 guys and a bunch of good supporting guys, we're going to contend every single year.
Hey, Garth, going back to your comment about up to 5 roster moves and coaching moves next week, when you're making these moves and then the moves that may come with these extra 2 bags of gold, as you said, how much has COVID affected, and how much has Chris Henderson going to Miami affected just your work and the roster mechanics of scouting guys, bringing guys in and doing all the work that you normally do when COVID isn't happening, and you have a constant Chris Henderson right there? How much has it kind of been disrupted with these things in this specific off season that don't normally happen?
It's been hugely disruptive. I mean, I guess the one thing I'd say, Jackson, is that, we're 9 or 10 months into the pandemic now. And so I guess at least they're not new disruptions, that we were certainly disrupted going back to March. We couldn't scout for the summer window last year. We couldn't scout for the winter window. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to do much scouting for the summer window this time. And we got to adjust, we got to adapt. And, look, the good news is as a country is that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And, it seems like there's a renewed emphasis on a vaccination plan on a federal level. And that's what gives us hope. And hopefully we can all, at some point in 2021, we can all, hug each other in Lumen Field. And, we have that to look forward to. And I think as long as you have that hope, I think there's a lot of pent up demand to come out and watch events, folks that have been sitting at home for a long time. And if we can do that safely in 2021, I think that would be absolutely phenomenal. And in the meantime, we're going to adjust our scouting, and we're going to do more on video, and we're going to do more with analytics, and we're going to, tweak how we do things, and we're going to get through this and hopefully come out a stronger club for it on the other side of this thing.
And really quickly, you mentioned the vaccination plan. Have you started the conversations with players, with coaches on that vaccination plan for your club and everybody involved to get the vaccine when it eventually becomes available?
No, Jackson, we've not had those conversations. We are, as you can imagine, pretty sensitive to not jumping the line, not being seen to get any kind of favorable treatment in that context. And look, I imagine that at some point, as we get a firm schedule from MLS, that they will roll out some plans in conjunction with that. And what we saw for the last 10 months is that oftentimes the professional sports leagues, hockey, basketball, baseball, football, like they tend to roll out fairly similar approaches to these kinds of things. So will be interesting to see what those leagues say and do over the next weeks and months as well, and look and to see how the vaccination goes, because these questions are really critical and fraught with tension if there aren't enough vaccines and no one's getting vaccinated. But if we get a credible process and we get a couple months down the road and it's really going well and there's abundant vaccine availability, then it's obviously less of an issue. So as we're just going to have to sit tight and kind of see how it evolves.
Garth, with Chris, when did you first learn that he was looking into leaving, and was there any conversation or trying to keep him?
Look, I mean, the conversations about him leaving, as I alluded to, you could argue they've gone back at least 5 years on my hiring. I just would say simply that I couldn't believe how lucky I was to work with Chris Henderson for as long as I did, and I'll always be grateful for him sticking with us and with me for that period of time. So, he had interviewed for the Miami job a couple of years ago already. And we had always supported him and said, anytime you want to go and run the show, like you are more than ready, more than capable of doing that. And so we've always been supportive, Jada. And he came back to us this time and said, hey, Miami moved on from their GM and they want to talk to me. And we said, great, go for it. And I think it's probably a month ago now or so, roughly, for that timing. And obviously Chris went over there and impressed him again, and they went forward. And that was what it was. And look, did we have conversations with Chris? Like, sure, but those again, it wasn't a black and white thing. Like there was a last second, excuse me, press to keep Chris. I mean, we were all grateful and appreciative and supportive of Chris, and we would have done anything to keep him. But likewise, we really wanted him to take this opportunity and see it through if that was something he wanted to do. So very similar to Jordan in the sense of somebody who really been part of our group for, in Chris's case, is for 13 years. Again, twice as long as I've been here. And shame on us if we did anything other than say, hey, whatever you want, we will support you. And, we will, certainly if you want to stay, we'll give you a new contract. But, that wasn't really the point or the emphasis of the decision, I don't think.
And you said that, obviously it's not just yourself, it's not just him that, as far as the way that you guys are structured, but is it a big hole or does, you were saying a little bit of being disruptive. So, is it like are you catching up real quick as far as his departure goes, or is everything still intact to make it through at least this season, or until you find an option as far as replacing him?
Yeah. Look, again, if you lose someone of Chris Henderson's ability, it would be incredibly naive to say that you're not going to have a hole to fill. There absolutely will be. One thing that helps us maybe uniquely in this particular case is that our scouting manager was Chris's little brother, Sean. And Sean is himself very competent. And Sean managed all of our databases of players, just as one example. So normally one of the things you worry about when your chief talent evaluator leaves is that he basically packs up and takes his book of business with him. And again, even if you technically have those lists, he's the one with the relationships and the conversations and the detail. And so you have this massive chasm that you have to drive back into and fill. And that's not the case here, both because Chris left on good terms and, has always been, Chris and I have almost always collaborated on relationships. Obviously, I had my own when I came from Salt Lake, but he's done a great job of training Sean and really getting Sean up to speed as they've worked together the last 2 or 3 years. And so Sean now has a lot of those relationships as well. So we feel good about the continuity on that front. And we have the book of business, because Sean was the one that was organizing that, was the gatekeeper of that all along. And so, it's an opportunity for him to grow. It's also an opportunity for Robbie to grow. He's always helped us with player personnel. But now, as we move forward, I think there's a space that he can have a bigger role in as well. And then even somebody you guys probably don't know as well, Corey Sinzer. He's done a whole bunch of stuff for us with Defiance. He's a really smart kid, and he's super well organized. And he's somebody that I think could take some of the aspects of this, some of the responsibilities that Chris had, and really help us with our vertical integration across the club, and with some of the implementation of the salary cap in particular. Is maybe something where Corey can help us down the road. So we're going to continue to evolve as a club. I think we're going to be able to interview some pretty impressive folks to fill the role. And in the meantime, we're going to try to get more out of all the folks we have internally. And again, one of the things that I'm most proud of personally is I think I'm pretty good at arranging organizations and putting folks in different roles and positions to succeed, and helping folks work together. And this now becomes incumbent upon me to do that and to keep the organization together and steer the ship until we get somebody in to replace Chris's role.
Just real quickly, I want to just touch up on that real quick. So is Sean Henderson going to have some sort of ability to interview for that position that was filled by Chris?
Again, whether we interview Sean directly to replace Chris or not, I honestly don't know the answer to that right now, Nico. What I would say is, no matter who we hire, we want to have an opportunity to grow Sean and to really look at him as a talent evaluator in his own right, and to say, how do we match up the skill sets of the folks we have with the folks that we bring in? And honestly, like with the pool that we're looking at right now, we're going to intentionally interview people from a whole bunch of different skill sets. We're going to look at talent guys who are primarily talent evaluators. We're going to look at folks with a really detailed player development background. We're going to look at folks who maybe have been a GM before. We're going to look at folks that have experience in the league. We have folks that have experience abroad. So we're going to intentionally come at it and kind of say, we're not going to get put in this box. We're not going to say we have to do it this way because that's the way we did it before. We're really going to try to take a blue sky approach and say, what are we good at? What do we need? What's the best fit in terms of any one candidate in terms of complementing what we have here? Because clearly, I think we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We've been pretty good at this for a long time. And as much as Chris quite rightfully gets the absolute lion's share of the credit and was the single most important piece, we do have other pieces. We do have other things in place, other structures that give me some confidence that we can get back to being as good as we were before. As with any transition, you're going to take a little step back first, but hopefully you can build it back over time.
It's like Kobe and Shaq with the Lakers. No one left, one stayed.
How many titles? How many rings they win? They got three, right?
They got three. They got three. Yeah.
Got three. We only get two. So
yeah, we kind of joked around. But yeah, no, sorry.
Garth, you've mentioned player development a few times now. In general, for the three guys of Danny Leyva, Alfonso Ocampo Chavez, and Ethan Doubleair, what do you want to see from them in 2021? And do you have any specific numbers in mind, like starts or anything else that you want to see out of those three guys in 21 as they develop?
Look, we're going to get together with the coaching staff and hopefully by then, in the next couple of weeks or month, we're able to bring in this new technical person to replace Chris. And we're going to get everybody in a room and we're going to try to figure that out. But one of the metrics that I think, Jackson, that's really important is, with some of the young player development stuff, it doesn't have to be that Ethan plays 2,000 minutes as a right wing. It might be that he plays and then Leyva plays, and then Atencio plays, and then Fonz plays, and then Shandon plays. I think the biggest thing is finding structures where these kids can succeed, and because we can't treat them at 18 years old the way we do a 28-year-old with 10 years of experience. They need more structure. They need more tactical instruction. They need veteran players around them. I don't think anyone is coming into this and saying, you know what the solution is? Let's put all 5 of those kids on the field together and just let them figure it out, right? That's not going to succeed. So I really think it's a balance in terms of having a little bit of a varied pathway and look and understanding even that with some of these young guys, they're going to be awesome for a month and then they're going to be less awesome. And then, you go back to 2016 with Jordan Morris. And one of you, I was reading one of your pieces this morning. I think maybe it was Jeremiah. But he reminded me that, when we signed Jordan, he didn't score for 2 months. And, we pulled him out of the team and then we put him back in and then he started scoring and then he kind of never looked back. So, it's, again, I don't want to put that kind of pressure on any one of our young kids right now that they have to be the next Jordan Morris, but, can they be steady, reliable players? Let's start there. Can they be part of the rotation on a normal basis? Because then if they do that and they're comfortable and they have the support around them they need, that's when I think we'll see one of them pop. But again, it's the idea that the collective group, I think, is super talented. And we've seen players of similar experience succeed in other clubs, right? If you look at that under 17 team, that World Cup team that Fonz and Ethan and Leyva played on, there are half a dozen kids now on other teams that are really starting to be impactful and really have influence within their teams. But it takes time and it takes patience. And it's something that, look, we were focused correctly. I said it, we went all in to try to be a dynasty, to try to win at least three titles. And look, we fell short of our goal ultimately in Columbus, and that stunk. And that was, embarrassing and a little humiliating. And it was a real bummer of a way to end the year. But hopefully we're going to learn from it. And, we're going to say, hey, we all knew what we were doing. We went for it. We took our best shot. And, now we're going to rebuild our team in this new way. And hopefully it's going to come back better than ever. Sorry, I use that word I hate. We're not rebuilding anything. We are retooling around our core. This is not a rebuild. We're going to be contenders this year.
Garth, with Brian's contract, is this a strategic rollout of news, or has there been an issue as to why that hasn't been formally announced yet, or is it even still on the table?
Yeah, I'll repeat for the group here what I said a couple weeks ago, that there's never been any doubt in my mind that Brian would be signed with the Sounders. It's a 20-year relationship that he's had. And predating that obviously as a player, but just within the coaching ranks when it was the Sounders were USL, when the Sounders were MLS, and the assistant had it just felt like, and that's, I don't mean that in any other means, and that's just what it felt like to me. It felt like we would always get something done. And so, definitely very optimistic for that one and optimistic for Brian to be here for a long time into the future, and excited to continue to work with him.
So it's not officially done yet?
We will have an announcement potentially early next week.
Okay.
Guys, any other final questions?
Yeah, I'll ask one more. We did get an announcement from USL that they have a flexible start to the season. Just curious about how you see Defiance as they roll into a potential start in May, and how the team is kind of coming together.
A lot of this, Mickey, is going to be determined. We don't know anything about. Assuming MLS starts on time, then that's one different plan. Is MLS going to be in a bubble? Is Defiance going to be in a bubble from a training environment perspective? what are the Washington State regulations around return to play. There's just a whole bunch of stuff we don't know. So, if it looks like last year, there are certainly, like, one of the things you saw is, and you're going to see this next week, is we have more goalkeepers than we did last year, because we want to be prepared. What we learned is, in this bubble scenario where we can't move guys between training sessions, we just need more goalkeepers. So you're going to see us and some things that we did to reflect that next week. But it's stuff like that where you still are kind of assuming the worst, but hoping for the best. And, you got to have plans for both. So last year was a huge bummer from a player development standpoint. But look, I mean, we still made some progress on guys like Ethan Doubelair, who I think really came on over the course of the year. Danny Leyba had a really tough year with multiple injuries. Shandon had multiple injuries. So look, if those guys get healthy, it's going to help. We have a couple kids we're really excited about. I know Coach has talked about Reed Baker-Whiting. There's a kid, Leyva, down at Defiance that we think is pretty good. Alec Diaz is in the conversation. So we got some prospects there, and even the kid that we drafted. And I want to clarify that, by the way. I know we had different reports in accounting, but just to be clear to everybody, Chris and I did that deal, and then Miami picked Hafferty for us. So that was very intentional. And it was just, we had some technology issues, and Mike had to call timeout. It was easier for everybody to announce it, to have them take Hafferty and then announce it as a trade afterwards. But I didn't clear up any, that was just a normal trade. It was something that was done. And instead of us slotting in and taking Joe, they took him and then sent him to us. So he's a kid who's going to start with Defiance. And, we wanted to continue to try to develop right back candidates. And that's where we see Joe. We see him in that right back role, starting with Defiance. And again, I think he's probably more likely going to stay in school in the short term. But it's, excuse me, when he's ready, then we'll start working with him as well. And I think that Defiance team will start to come together a little bit more as we get, if in fact that May 1st date holds up, Mickey, or, with a flex schedule, whatever, then obviously we're talking about a preseason in likely in March at some point. And, so that's still 4 to 6 weeks away, and we'll know more then as to what's possible and what's not.
Can you share a little bit about the way that you and Chris worked together, or at least the team worked together? And the reason why I ask is David Beckham had said that he wants to have his hands on every single player signing and, every single player that they look at, and seemed like he was really going to be involved. So I wanted to know if that's the way that y'all worked, or if you could just kind of share the way that y'all worked up here, you and Chris.
Yeah, Chris and I always worked in close collaboration. And look, and I say that, and he had broad autonomy in terms of the scouting, and a lot of our meetings, in my role is laying out structure and saying, hey, here's what the analysts think. Here's the play, and Chris coming to me and saying, here's the player profile as to the type of player we're looking for, having conversations about the budget range, things like that. But it's, Chris and I were, just in constant communication in terms of collaboration, and our ownership group is involved as well. Every ownership group is involved to some degree, and I think David's maybe just a little bit more famous than some of the other owners that are maybe looking at this stuff. But it's always a collaborative process, and you're working together with a number of folks. And I would imagine it wouldn't be that far different in Miami than what it is here in Seattle.
Garth, I just wanted to get one question in here real fast. You've mentioned the importance of potentially bringing in someone to replace or to fill Chris's role that is maybe a little bit more geared towards development. You talk about replacing Morris. I realize that this is probably something that gets put off until what's going on with him. But how much focus is there on using some of that? Again, I know it's not official yet, but the U22 kind of initiative, like looking at like spending money on a player with high upside who maybe isn't going to come in and produce right away. Is that something that you guys are looking at doing? I mean,
until we know the rule, Jeremiah, there's nothing I can really, right? Like if the rule comes in, then yes, then that's something we would, yes, sorry, not to be coy. If that happens, then yes, that is a mechanism that we would explore, and that we would look to use to our benefit, as would again, I have to assume if it passes, that means every team in the league feels the same way. So I don't know that it'll be any particular innovation on our part. But yes, we would look to avail ourselves of all the ways to make our team as good as we can.
Go through quickly. Are there any of the players that perhaps you didn't keep in contract from last season that either you're still in talks or that might be set to come back?
Well, you've seen probably that Gustav signed in China, so he is definitely not coming back. With respect to Joven and Kelvin, those guys have a ton of teams that are interested in him, and Joven's a free agent, so it's literally completely up to him. Kelvin, we still have right of first refusal with as a result of him dropping out of the reentry draft, but same kind of thing, man. We're going to work with those guys, and we're going to get them to teams in situations where they want to go. Those guys were really good players for us, really good servants to the club for a long period of time. And if we're not able to accommodate them from a salary cap perspective, then we're going to do our best to work in their best interests and get them to situations. And again, whether that's MLS, whether that's outside of MLS, I mean, that's the players are the ones that are going to drive that process at this point.
Thanks.
Garth, last question. Do you think that the new political environment will impact the soccer in general in the nation?
I mean, look, I can cite the generic studies that blue states tend to like soccer more than red states, but I mean, I don't know, Felipe. That's a pretty profound question. I've read some pieces lately that Joe Biden has some relationship with the game, maybe more than the previous president. And that's great. But I think that, the biggest impact on our business is going to be how we handle the virus as a country. And, can we have an effective vaccination program such that we can safely get people back into Lumen Field and having fun and celebrating together. And I think that's what'll drive it. And to go back to Nico's question real quick, I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Gustav and to Kelvin and to Joven. I mean, those guys were heroes, man. They started multiple cup finals. They're some of the best players in their position in the league. I mean, Gustav, all he did was replace Ozzie Alonso and win a title the next year. Something that's almost impossible to do. Kelvin Leerdam for me has been, along with DeAndre Yedlin, the best right back in the history of the Sounders organization. A guy who's widely regarded as a top 5 right back in the league. Joven Jones hit the best penalty kick maybe I've ever seen in 2016 and against Toronto to win the title. I mean, not to win it directly, but to be part of it, man, just cool as ice. And, has had a wonderful, run with us, 2 runs with us. And so, look, hopefully we can continue to treat players with respect. And we've seen some players that over the years have wanted to come back to us in one form or another as a result of the organization built and the culture we have. And, we're going to strive to continue to do that. In the meantime, I definitely want to give a hat tip to those guys because they were an incredible part of our success, of my success over the last number of years. And we're really, really grateful for their contributions.